Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a look at the invisible architecture that basically runs your life: habits.
Yeah, and we're going way beyond the usual advice, the just try harder stuff.
Exactly. We're jumping headfirst into the neurology, the corporate strategies, the social forces that are really pulling the strings.
It's so important because you can't change something if you don't actually understand what it is. Our mission today is really to show you the blueprint.
To see habits not as simple choices, but as these complex, automatic responses.
Right. We want to get into why a company like Alcoa can suddenly become a powerhouse of safety, or how entire social movements just seem to gain this unstoppable momentum.
I think the most shocking thing right off the bat is just how little we're actually in control. William James said it back in 1892. All our life is but a mass of habits. And you think you're making decisions all day, but, well, the science says you're not.
The vast majority of it is just patterns running in the background.
So let's unpack that. How does the brain just outsource control like that?
Well, we have to start with the foundational discovery. The classic case study is a man named Eugene Pauly.
Ah, yes.
Eugene was 86, and because of a viral infection, he basically lost his ability to make new memories. His medial temporal lobe was fun. It was gone. He couldn't remember his nurses, what he just ate, nothing.
So if you left the room and came back 5 minutes later,
He would have no idea who you were. But, and this is the incredible part, he could still form new routines.
without remembering how he learned them.
Exactly. They moved him to a new house, and after a while, he could find his way to the bathroom, to the kitchen, no problem. But if you asked him where the kitchen was, he couldn't tell you. His body knew, but his conscious mind was completely blank.
That's genuinely unsettling. It means your skills can exist completely separate from your conscious memory. So where is this happening? What part of the brain is running the show?
It's a deep, ancient part of the brain called the basal ganglia, and its main job is something researchers call chunking. It takes a complex sequence of actions, like all the little steps for backing a car out of the driveway, and it bundles them into one single automatic routine.
It compresses the file, basically, to save energy.
Precisely. It saves enormous mental effort. It's why you can drive home and suddenly realize you don't remember the last 5 miles. Your basal ganglia had the wheel.
And this whole system is built on a really simple framework, right? The habit loop.
A simple 3-step loop. Step 1 is the cue. That's the trigger, the thing that tells your brain to go into automatic mode.
That could be anything, right? The time of day, a location.
A location, a time, an emotion, the person you're with, the action you just finished. Anything. For you, it might be the ding from your phone.
Right, and that's the cue for step 2, the routine.
Which is picking up the phone, unlocking it, checking the message. That routine can be physical, mental, anything.
And then the payoff, step 3.
The reward, that little hit of satisfaction, of dopamine, that tells your brain, hey, that was good, let's remember that loop for next time.
And this is the critical part. Once that loop is burned in, the rest of your brain, the decision-making part, it just kind of quiets down.
It stops fully participating. You're running on code unless you deliberately fight it.
So if the loop is the hardware, what's the electricity? What powers it? It can't just be neutral instruction.
Craving, that's the engine.
There.
And the best story to understand this is Claude Hopkins and Pepsodent toothpaste. This was back in the early 20th century.
He had to figure out how to sell it to a country that largely didn't brush its teeth.
Right, and just telling people it was healthy, wasn't going to cut it, it wasn't motivating. So he found a universal cue: tooth film. That slightly fuzzy feeling on your teeth that everyone has.
Okay, so that's the trigger.
The reward he promised was a beautiful smile, social acceptance. But the real genius, the thing that created the craving, was in the ingredients.
What did he do?
Pepsodent had things like citric acid and mint oil in it. They didn't actually help clean your teeth at all. They were just mild irritants. Yeah. They created this cool tingling sensation on your tongue and gums. And people started to associate that tingle with the feeling of being clean.
Ah, so the craving wasn't for clean teeth. It was for the feeling of the tingle itself.
They craved the sensation. If they didn't feel that tingle, they didn't feel like the product was working. That craving is what powered the habit morning and night.
That is just a masterclass in behavioral design. And you can contrast that with a huge failure, at least initially, for Breeze.
The total flop when it first launched. It was designed to eliminate odors, but it had a fundamental problem. No cue, so no craving. The woman in one of the studies, she had 9 cats. The house smelled terrible, but she couldn't smell it. She was nose blind. So the trigger for using the product just wasn't there for the people who needed it most.
So how did they turn that around? Because Febreze is a massive success now.
They completely repositioned it. It went from being a problem solver to a reward.
A reward for what?
A reward for cleaning. The new Q is the act of finishing a chore. You've just made the bed, you've just vacuumed. The routine is a quick spritz of Febreze.
And the reward is that pleasant scent, the little celebration.
Exactly. The craving became, I want my room to smell as nice as it looks. They created a whole new loop.
And this all comes back to the neurology of anticipation, doesn't it? The experiment with Julio the monkey is just fascinating.
It fundamentally changed our understanding. So Julio was trained to press a lever when a shape appeared on screen to get a drop of blackberry juice.
The reward.
At first, his brain's dopamine system would spike when the juice arrived. But as the habit got stronger, something amazing happened. The spike moved.
It moved earlier.
It started spiking the instant the cue appeared, the shape on the screen.
Yeah.
Not when he got the reward.
So his brain was getting excited in anticipation.
That anticipation is the craving, neurologically speaking. It's the engine. If you want to change a habit, you have to get a handle on the craving.
Huh.
Okay, so with all that in mind, the loop, the craving, we get to the core strategy for change. It's called the golden rule of habit change.
And the rule is deceptively simple, isn't it?
It is. It says, keep the old cue, keep the old reward, but insert a new routine.
You're not trying to ignore the trigger or pretend you don't want the relief. You're just swapping out the middle piece.
The best real-world example of this is Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a perfect application of the rule.
So for someone struggling with alcohol, the cue is often what? Stress, anxiety.
Overwhelming stress, boredom, loneliness, you name it. And the reward they're seeking is genuine emotional relief. A bit of numbness, a distraction.
And AA doesn't say, stop feeling stressed. That's impossible.
Impossible. Instead, when that cue hits, it gives you a new routine. Call your sponsor, go to a meeting, work through the steps.
So you still get the reward, the emotional relief and connection, but through a constructive routine instead of a destructive one.
And what really makes it stick is belief. The community aspect builds the belief that change is actually possible. That's the secret ingredient.
Let's scale this up now from the individual to the organizational level and talk about keystone habit.
Right. These are powerful. A keystone habit is a habit that when you change it, it starts a chain reaction that remakes other patterns.
And the classic example here is Paul O'Neill when he took over as CEO of Alcoa.
It's a fantastic story. He gets up in front of Wall Street investors, his first big meeting, and they're all expecting him to talk about profits, margins, the usual stuff.
Yeah, Instead,
he says his number one priority, his only non-negotiable focus is going to be worker safety. 0 injuries.
And investors were just baffled.
They thought he was crazy. But O'Neill understood that safety was a keystone. See, to get to 0 injuries, you have to know why accidents are happening in real time.
So he put a new system in place.
A radical new routine. Anytime there was an accident, anywhere in the world, the unit president had to report it to O'Neill himself within 24 hours and have a plan to fix it.
Wow, that would force some changes.
It forced a total transformation. Suddenly, you needed better communication between workers and managers. You needed a global email network, which they built. You needed transparency.
And all of those things, better communication, faster data, they don't just improve safety.
They improve everything. Quality, efficiency, productivity. O'Neill never promised higher profits, but by focusing on that one keystone habit, Alcoa's profits hit a record high, and you see the exact same keystone effect with willpower.
Right, the sources are really clear that willpower isn't just a character trait, it's more like a muscle.
It's a finite resource. The classic experiment is the radish and cookie test. If you force people to resist a plate of fresh-baked cookies and eat radishes instead,
They use up their self-control.
exactly, they have less of it left for the next task. But, like you said, it's a muscle. You can strengthen it.
So by building discipline in one area, say an exercise routine,
It spills over. People who start exercising also start eating better. They're more productive at work. They manage their money better. It's a keystone that reinforces everything else.
which is where a company like Starbucks comes in. Their training is fascinating. They're basically trying to institutionalize willpower.
They are. They know their employees are going to face these moments of high stress, what they call inflection points.
The angry customer at the counter.
The angry customer, the morning rush, the exact moment your willpower is most likely to fail. So they give their employees a pre-written routine, the LAT method.
Listen, acknowledge, take action, thank, explain.
Right. So the employee doesn't have to use their finite willpower to decide how to react in that stressful moment. The disciplined, constructive response is already a habit. It's automatic.
They're turning self-discipline into an organizational script.
And that's how you strengthen willpower at scale. You make the right choice, the easiest choice.
This idea of ingrained automatic routines, though, it can also be incredibly dysfunctional, can't it? Especially in organizations that are resistant to change.
Oh, absolutely. It often takes a major crisis to break those toxic habits.
Yeah.
Look at the case of Rhode Island Hospital.
They had repeated cases of wrong site surgeries, just catastrophic errors.
And it was because of deep institutional habits. You had a culture of physician arrogance, where doctors saw checklists as beneath them, and you had a habit of passivity among nurses.
So the nurses might suspect an error, but their ingrained routine was to stay quiet and just double-check things silently.
Exactly. The habit of deference was stronger than the habit of speaking up for safety. It took a massive crisis and external pressure after a surgeon operated on the wrong side of a man's head to finally force them to change.
And we see the same pattern with the London Underground fire, a tragedy that killed 31 people.
That was a direct result of social habits. The different departments were run like fiefdoms, the four barons, and they had this unspoken truce to never interfere in each other's business. It maintained peace, but it was deadly when it came to safety coordination. Only the crisis could break that truce.
Which brings us from organizational habits to broader social habits. This is how movements start, isn't it? The Montgomery bus boycott is the classic case.
It's a perfect illustration. Rosa Parks' act was the spark, but the fire spread because of social networks.
It started with her close friends, right? What they call strong ties.
Exactly. Parks was deeply connected in her community. Her friends, her church groups, her activist circles, they could mobilize incredibly quickly. That's why the first day of the boycott was such a success.
But to sustain a movement for over a year, you need more than just friends.
That's where weak ties come in. These are your acquaintances, the people you sort of know. Once the movement reached a certain size, peer pressure took over.
It became socially costly not to participate.
Right. Walking to work became the new social habit.
Yeah.
To make it endure, they had to give people a new sense of identity.
This is where leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. were so important.
He provided new habits of thought and behavior. The philosophy of nonviolence became an ingrained routine. The mass meetings, the carpools, these were new shared habits that built a powerful new identity and sustained the movement.
So this all brings us to the biggest question of all, really. Responsibility, free will. Where do habits end and our choices begin?
And the sources give us two incredible contrasting legal cases to think about this. First, you have Brian Thomas, the man who killed his wife while having a night terror.
He was sleepwalking. He thought he was fighting an intruder.
And the court acquitted him. They ruled it was an automatic primitive habit, a sleep terror. He had zero conscious input. His basal ganglia was running a very old, very broken script.
Now contrast that with Angie Bachman, the pathological gambler.
She lost her entire inheritance, and the casinos knew her habits and exploited them with targeted marketing. She argued she was just as powerless as Thomas.
But she was held legally responsible for her debts. So neurologically, her craving loop was just as powerful. Why the different outcome?
The key difference in the eyes of the law was awareness. Thomas was completely unconscious. He was unaware of the habit. Bachman, despite the power of her craving, was aware that she had a gambling problem.
She knew the pattern existed.
She knew the pattern existed. And once you have that awareness, you have the responsibility to act, to find a way to intervene, to insert a new routine, even if it's incredibly difficult. The freedom to change the loop begins with the recognition that the loop is there.
So that's really the core lesson here. Habits aren't destiny, they're code, and they can be rewritten. It takes diagnosing the loop, cultivating a craving for a better reward, and often leaning on a community to build that belief that change is really possible.
Which leaves us with one final and I think pretty provocative thought for you to take away. We know how habits are formed. We know that once we recognize a pattern, the responsibility to manage it becomes ours.
But what happens when other people or other systems know our patterns better than we do?
It's exactly. What happens when predictive analytics, like the algorithms Target uses to figure out you're pregnant before your family knows, can see your next move before you do? When an external entity knows your unconscious behavioral loop, how far does your responsibility extend then?
Something to think about. We urge you to take a look at your own water, the automatic choices you swim in every single day. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.